Hey everyone! Since I finished episode 200 on Sonic 06 last week, I decided to finally sit down and play Metroid Dread because I was really laser focused on getting the big video done and really on the streak of videos leading into it because kind of now that they're all done, you can kind of see in retrospect like the Sonic retrospective, then the breather, and then Sonic 06, kind of a 4 episode arc. I was really focused on that for like months. And the culmination to the big video, actually. So I finally sat down and played Metroid Dread, because, as I've said several times, I love the Metroid games. And I know people were asking for a review about Dread, but the thing is, like, when I play these games for my own amusement, I like to not take footage. I like to just go in, not with the mindset that I'm reviewing it, just for my own amusement and stuff. So I didn't record... Well, I recorded, like, a few 30-second clips of Metroid Dread, one of which I'll probably throw in here for obvious reasons, but I just went in trying to play it for me, so I thought I might do a vlog, just kind of get my general thoughts out there, because I really liked Metroid Dread, but I easily see why it's been so divisive, and why people have been asking about it. So I want to get the good out of the way first. Dread is one of the 2D Metroid-style games. It's basically takes a lot from Samus Returns. So if you want to know if you'll like it or not, I'd say start with Samus Returns on the 3DS and basically see if you want a harder version of that. I know it's a cliche to say that something is the Dark Souls of so and so. I've got a hole in my sock and I can't stop playing with it, and I haven't played Dark Souls myself. I just really have Jim Stephanie Sterling's descriptions of it to go on. But Dread really does kind of feel like a Dark Souls approach to the series, because there are certain very difficult enemies that I'll get into in depth. The bosses are a lot harder, but it's not so much that the bosses are so, oh my god, hard and impossible. It's less get good and more get perseverant, or whatever the hell that word is. But the good I liked in Dread right off the bat. The maps are very well laid out with, again, one big exception I'll get into later. I think these might be the most complex the level maps of any Metroid game have been, or at least any that I can think of off the top of my head. The movement is very smooth. It's very fast. Backtracking between various levels is super smooth. It's really easy to get where you need to go when you're going around exploring for pickups. Graphics are gorgeous. Just brightly colored, really nice and stark. The new design for Samus, because Metroid Dread follows up from Metroid Fusion, and the Fusion suit I was worried they were kind of writing themselves into a corner with Fusion, and the Fusion suit looked really weird. It was basically like flesh instead of armor, and in the Dread, the suit is basically reverting back, is the explanation. Love the new armor designs for Samus. The story is really good, which is odd because Metroid games tend to not have story at all, but Metroid Prime 3 is actually one of my favorites in the series, and I kind of put Fusion in the same general area as Zero Mission, even though Zero Mission is honestly the better game, just because I like having the narrative in Metroid games. The tricky thing about Metroid Dread is it has a good story, but they don't tell you what it is until about the halfway point. Like, basically in Dread, Samus lands on a planet looking for X-parasites. A mysterious dude ambushes her, and then you're just told, try to get back to the surface of the planet, and you don't find out what all's big is going on until, again, halfway through. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers as much as I can for anyone who's interested, but whatever. But yeah, I do really appreciate it when I personally like it when the Metroid games include story. The action is great. The new items are kind of hit and miss. They add an item called the Cross Bomb that basically makes Samus's Morph Ball bombs explode in plush shapes like Bomberman, and it's really just a poor substitute for the Boost Ball in the Prime series. But they have a new weapon called the Storm Missile that I used a lot, because it basically lets you lock onto an enemy and then fire cluster missiles at them, and it really comes in handy for bosses. I really like that item. The rest is pretty much the standard Metroid Arsenal. But the game really cleverly does several things that take an experienced Metroid player and kind of throws them off their balance. Like in most Metroid games, the Morph Ball is like one of the first items you get. It's a really basic navigation tool that you use nonstop. And in this one, they don't it obviously depends on how quickly you go through the game, because this is the kind of game that took me probably, I don't know, take out backtracking for items. It probably took me 6 or 7 hours to beat. It takes place, some people 2. That you don't get the Morph Ball until like an hour and a half in, and it really weirds you out as an experienced player. They had that's not to say you're just screwed, because you have they have magnet walls you can climb on, and they have a slide move that really comes in handy and really helps with the Emmy chases as the thrilling feeling. It does a lot of little touches like that throws experienced players off their balance. Past that, it pretty much plays like a regular Metroid game, except for the big thing or at least the big thing I think that is dividing people on the game, because I went out of my way to avoid like press or coverage of the game. Even Re-Res has a res cast on it that I very consciously did not watch, although I need to catch up on those anyway. The big thing that Dread is now known for, the big gimmick it has to set it apart from the other Metroid games, is you get down to the planet and there are 7 robots called Emmys. The Emmys are built out of armor that is pretty much indestructible. They're really fast. They chase after you. They can hear you, and if they spot you, they basically just beeline right for you and try to catch you. And if they catch you, you die instantly. And the Emmys are actually really cool addition to the game. They're really cool thematically, because Metroid has always taken inspiration from the Alien franchise, and the Emmys basically, they behave exactly like xenomorphs. They navigate around using hatches that you can't get into. They climb on all the terrain exactly like xenomorphs, and when they catch you, they kill you using an extending jaw exactly like the xenomorphs do. So that is a really cool touch for this franchise, especially where it's like, the Metroid games always kind of take inspiration from Alien, but by the end of the game, you're pretty much death incarnate and the effect has been lost. So I really appreciated that. The problem is the Emmys are challenging to handle, we'll say. Now, the Emmys are not a problem nonstop, because they're only active in very specific areas of the map. And you go through very specific doors that basically tell you you are now entering an Emmy zone, and the screen goes all black and white and like hazy, and the music cuts off. Basically, they do absolutely everything to spell it out that hey, dumbass, an Emmy is active in this area. And if you can run through a door, even if one is on, and if one has heard you and is kind of following you but isn't actively chasing you, you can always run through a door and it'll lose you and it'll wander off. So, but the thing about the Emmys is there's a lot to unpack here. Their AI can be a very big problem. There are 7 Emmys in the game, but really just 5, because the first one is a tutorial and the last one is kind of a gimme. I don't want to spoil why, but basically Samus gets a new power at the end of the game to where you're introduced to the Emmy and she goes, "Enough with this shit!" and just kills it with her bare hands, it's really cool and, again, throws you off. But, so the 5 Emmys that remain. The Emmys run on rules that you are not told, and those rules change with each one that you fight, I think is probably the best way to explain it. The first 2 Emmys, the first 2 real Emmys that you fight, if they spot you, you can run away from them, and it actually leads to really thrilling chases where it's like you're frantically looking for whatever terrain you can climb, anything you can slide under to get some distance, just frantically being pursued through the level, and kind of like, just like you kind of have to throw exploration to the wind and go, and just run away. And I was really digging that, where the first 2 Emmys, they chase you everywhere. And then the third one, the yellow one, each Emmy is imbued with basically a part of Samus's arsenal, and the third one has the speed boots. If it spots you, you're dead. There is no fucking running away from the yellow one. If it spots you, you're done, son. You might as well just let it catch you. It's like, so even though the second Emmy has the morph ball power to where you can't really hide in little nooks and crannies to get away from it, the third one, you have to hide in nooks and crannies or else it's gonna catch you. And the thing that was really infuriating me about the Emmys is they give you a stealth power called the Phantom Cloak. It drains a power meter and then it starts draining your health if you keep using it. It seriously slows you down, but it renders you ostensibly undetectable to the Emmys. And what the Phantom Cloak does is it makes you invisible, it makes you silent unless you start firing weapons. And but if the Emmy walks into you on its own, it still kills you. And the problem with that is the Emmy AI Emmys are programmed to put there are certain sections of the game where Emmys will patrol an area that you need to cross non-stop, and they basically, if you need to go through this area to get to a vital area, the Emmy will just keep walking back and forth, basically acting like it knows exactly where you are, even if it really shouldn't. And the problem with that is, with the yellow Emmy, basically, if you hide in a morph ball hole, like a little cubby nook, then it won't get you. But if you hide on a ceiling with the magnet grab, which it tells you should avoid the Emmy, because that Emmy is patrolling that area all over and over and over again, it's going to touch you, it's going to kill you. There are only very specific tiny spots where you can hide, and it actually works. And I think the fourth one is the same way. The fourth one is the Ice Beam Emmy, where if it spots you, it freezes you, and then it catches you, and even then it's too fast to get away from. So there are two Emmys that are utter nightmares to deal with. And what I eventually figured out is you have to use the stealth power and move. You can barely move while using the stealth power, but you basically have to do it and suck it up and just get as close to the exit or where you need to go as possible using the stealth powers, and basically just suck it up when it starts draining your energy, or deal with how it reduces your movement. The thing about the Emmys that you need to keep in mind is they are all so fucking restrictively programmed on what actually works against them that each one is basically a puzzle segment. They're pitched as being like a horror antagonist, like the Scissor Man from Clock Tower or Mr. X from Resident Evil, and it's supposed to make the game a horror movie, but each one is so specifically programmed about only one thing works on it, and that's it. They're basically puzzles. They're the game regularly grinding to a halt so you can complete this puzzle that kills you over and over and over and over while you try to figure out through trial and error what the hell is going on, what the damn rules are. And that's why, even though I like Metroid Dread, I can easily see why people have been telling me that they were turned off by it, because it's trial and error gameplay all the way your first time through, getting murdered by this Emmy for what feels like unfair bullshit over and over until you figure out your way through. And it really is just the mindset of approaching it as a puzzle game and not as a horror, you can totally hide from this thing or react in certain ways to it. Because again, like the fifth Emmy, the last real one that you fight, suddenly running away works perfectly fine on that one. You basically just need to gain a little distance ahead of it first. And that's another thing. The yellow Emmy, you fight in an environment that is packed to the brim with fucking dead ends that lead nowhere. Like, who the hell was designing this thing's level where it will kill you basically because you wandered in somewhere wrong, and you have to map it out for yourself. I get that's the point, but you will basically go on the run from this thing, or fall, or you'll get fucking trapped constantly by the yellow one. Ugh, is the thing. So it's like, the Emmys are a good idea. They add some desperately needed identity to the game that sets it apart from all the other Metroid games, but they're not implemented very well. I do not like Doom Eternal. I played Doom Eternal, got up to the final boss, and there are so many unbalanced things in that game that pissed me the fuck off that I don't like Doom Eternal. The Marauders are the first on the top of that list, which is why when I saw in the DLC they had a stinger where, oh, now you have to fight 2 Marauders at once, I was like, screw that! The Marauders are just... I wouldn't mind them so much if it felt at all consistent what the distance you had to keep from them to make them work properly, but it doesn't. But the pain totems are a massive pain in the ass too. Stuff that just kills you nonstop, on top of the combat being rejiggered to where you have to really tactically use everything on top of all this new shit that kills you really quickly. I do not... The Emmys are not as bad as all the crap that Doom Eternal throws against you. I still really liked Metroid Dread. A, because there is... the Emmys aren't that hard to deal with once you figure them out, and also because there are long stretches where they're not a factor. It also helps that unlike the older Metroid games, if you die to an Emmy or against a boss, it just real quickly respawns you right at the entrance to the boss, so you can just go right back in and get back to it. And the loading times across the board in the game are really short. That really minimizes a lot of the raging that would otherwise go on. So, Doom Eternal, I hated, or not hated, just didn't like very much. Metroid Dread, the Emmys are an issue, but not a deal breaker for me, I guess is the way to say it. So, like a friend of mine, Miles, on Twitter, was asking, he was basically trying to feel me out whether he should get Metroid Dread or not, because he was really curious about it. This is so not the first Metroid game to check out, because it even on top of the Emmys, I died a lot more to the bosses. There's a lot of really fast and furious boss battles with Chozo robots, just bosses that take lots of big chunks out of your health if you get hit. And this is playing on normal difficulty, because there is a hard mode you unlock later, but there's not real... I don't think there's an easy mode. I'm just saying, this is not the game to try if this is your first Metroid game. It's really probably geared more towards either seasoned players or players who don't mind getting their ass kicked. Is really the best way to describe it. What else is there? Because the Emmys are basically the big thing to talk about, because all the rest is basically regular Metroid that's designed really well. But, like, this one thing is basically going to completely make or break the game for you. That's another thing I wanted to say. I played Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS. I haven't played it for a while. They introduced a counter move where basically if an enemy tries to land an melee attack on you, you can knock them back and then shoot them for an insta-kill. They were trying to work in the hand-to-hand combat from Metroid Other M and have it not suck. And I liked Samus Returns, but it bugged me that the counter was used heavily to where it felt like it was the way to fight a bunch of the enemies. Dread brings the counter back, but it doesn't rely... You don't use it all that often. You use it on certain enemies, and there are some bosses where it's mandatory, but it's not like crammed down your throat, you will use this and like it, son of a bitch, like it felt like it was in Samus Returns. So, another thing that I really liked. They really packed the controller full. Like, everything on the controller does something different. Another thing that annoyed me, and this is not a thing exclusive to Metroid Dread. This is a thing that encompasses a lot of the games. Whoever designed the Shine Spark should be shot. Not fatally, like, not somewhere life-threatening. They should be shot somewhere that it hurts. The Shine Spark is this thing where you have a super speed power-up, you run at super speed, you push down, you build up a charge, and then you can use that charge to rocket somewhere in the stage. It's virtually useless for navigation or combat. the only reason the Shine Spark exists is because you need it to grab a lot of expansions, and these expansions will often take pinpoint precise accuracy, or else it doesn't count, and it can be utterly maddening, or at least it was to me. The villain of the game is the game digs a lot into lore from prior Metroid games, like Metroid Fusion. In Metroid Fusion, Samus gets attacked by an X parasite. They inject her with Metroid DNA because it's the only thing that'll save her, and it makes her basically the only person who's immune to this parasite that is instantly fatal to everything else. And amusingly, the X parasites look and behave almost like Venom in this game. It's kind of funny, but so in the plot of this one, there's a new villain called and another thing that's always been a factor in Samus's origin story is she comes from an alien race called the Chozo that raised her, but the Chozo have always been implied to be extinct. And the first thing you see in this game is like Samus is sent to a new planet because they found evidence that the X's are there, and she gets attacked by a Chozo, which is instantly just fascinating to anyone who follows the Metroid lore because they're supposed to be all gone, and there's this one that's like decked out in this big ass gray armor and just pissed the hell off, and it's like it really is interesting. And we probably learn more about Chozo lore here than I know in the Metroid Prime games. There's a lot of Chozo lore because you have lore entries and you scan them off walls and stuff, but there's a lot of interesting stuff added to the lore in this one. Basically, the bad guy is from a warrior tribe, and he's gone cuckoo and wants to take over the galaxy, and he wants Samus's Metroid DNA to do it. And that's why all the enemies are after you, because they're supposed to be scientific robots, and they jab you because they want to suck out your Metroid DNA. But the villain of the thing is called, I think it's Ravenbeak. It's a little unfortunate because you meet two Chozo members. One is named Ravenbeak and the other is named Quiet Robe. Like, I don't want to say it, but like stereotypical Indian names almost is going on in here. And Quiet Robe is this nice scientist guy who, of course, gets killed because Metroid, everything has to be tragic. But they kind of get in some subtle character work with Ravenbeak because when you get to him in the final boss, he's supposed to be this big, badass warrior from a really epic tribe of warriors, but he fights you like a complete coward, like hiding behind a everything-proof shield, and which I had to look up a walkthrough how to get through that. And then once that's gone, he like flies out of reach. He's like, aha, can't catch me now! And then when Samus blasts off one of his wings, he tries to look badass by ripping the other one off, but it's like, it's completely useless, functionally useless to him. It's like, you're not fooling anyone. And he fights you by just spamming attacks that nuke the entire room. It's just kind of this interesting little subtle bit of dig at him where he's acting tough. He's supposed to be from this big, strong group of warriors, but he acts like a complete coward. I thought I appreciated that because the dude's an annoying son of a bitch, and it's like taking the piss out of him really subtly while it does so. But like, the story is good because it introduces that element. There's a big twist at the end. I won't spoil, but what happens at the end without spoilers is they drop a bombshell that basically completely shatters the status quo of the series. And then right before the end credits roll, it gets magically undone. With no explanation. Like, Samus undergoes a certain transformation that I don't want to spoil because it really is a jaw-dropping moment in the game. And then Quiet Robe, who was possessed by an X and replaced by an X, shows up and heals her with no explanation as to how. So it's like they had this big jaw-dropper change to the status quo and completely, I don't know if chickened out of it or wrote themselves into a corner is the right term, but they undo it and I don't know why. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, the map is a lot more intuitive. The map will, if you spot an item, if you spot an expansion like a missile expansion or an energy tank, they pad out the expansions by having energy parts where you have to pick up 4 and then it gives you an energy tank. But if you see an energy tank or a missile, it will mark on the map for you where it is so that you can come back for it later without having to remember or keep track of all this stuff on your own. If you walk through an area where a power-up is hidden, that area of the map will flash for you to go back looking for it sometime. I know it kind of sound. If you say it the wrong way, it sounds like the game is playing for you. But basically, it's taking anything that a common sense player would mark down on the map and marking it for you, so you don't have to keep your own notes alongside in a really pain in the ass way. I really appreciated it, but then I could see with all the hardcore gamer stuff that goes around, I could see people getting mad that they basically added a feature to help. A feature that's convenient. I was going to say a feature that helps new people, but it helps everyone. It's a big convenience booster. I really liked it. What else is there? I can't think of anything else I want to say about the game off the top of my head. I can always record something and tack it on in editing afterwards if I do think of something. But I liked Metroid Dread, but it is not for everyone, is probably the best way to say it. I raged quite a bit at at the game. Mainly at the Emmys, partially at the Shine Spark, having to use it. Because, yeah, for the final boss, I needed every energy tank I could get. I scoured the whole damn level looking for him. And I ended up with a 96% completion, but backtracking to get all the items, my completion time was like 9 hours, so I didn't get any of the endings where Samus shows you the Zero suit. I just got the ending where it looked like Samus was pissed off at me. Which, you have a different Nintendo girl is kind of my favorite, so I guess I could understand that. I liked Metroid Dread. If you're, if you don't mind that there's a, kind of a brutal puzzle element to it every now and then, give it a try. I mean, if you're a fan of Metroid, I think you'll like it. Again, but I can see how the Emmys turn people off because they are a challenge. The next review is going to be Darker Skies, which is the sequel to Gray Skies, released less than a year after the first one came out. I know the Gray Skies video didn't do great numbers, but it's just a thing in my head where I want to cover Darker Skies because I guess I just like that video. And then I'm going to review whatever this piece of fuck is. So, look forward to that. Bye.